So how do they go to sleep at night? How do they have the heart to do this?
They sleep great. Once they figure out what your weakness is, what was really at the core of your person, it's a redeeming character, your love of animals, but that's the one that they're going to exploit. And they just push hard.
Hey guys, it'll mean the world to us if you can subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. Also, please share this content with the people that you love and care about so the word can get out there. And I promise I'll put in every single cell of my body to pump out good content like this. With that said, let's move on.
MeloCat's expert chat. Upgrade your cat's lifestyle.
Welcome back, everyone, to MeloCat's expert chat, where we talk with experts from all over the world. And in this series, we're going to help you better equip yourself to identify fraud and cons and anything fraudulent that could happen in the cat community. So this is for protecting yourself against various types of scams or deceptive practices that you might see. So today's discussion might seem really different at first, but we are here to connect the dots between different types of fraud. We're going to highlight the common tactics that scammers use, including those targeting compassionate individuals that we see in the animal community, and to people who like to do animal work, or even shelters, rescuers, could be you. So joining us today is Allister Field. Thanks so much for being with us.
No problem. Happy to come on.
So just a little bit about him. Allister, he's a fraud prevention expert with over 3 decades of experience in law enforcement, financial crime investigations, and community outreach. I know you started your career in social work before moving into the investigative and regulatory roles. But now this is where you developed deep insights into the fraudsters' behavior, strategy, and their mindsets. Now, currently, I know that he's the host of the podcast called Fraud and Company. So I'm going to put that link in the description as well. He's going to be sharing his extensive knowledge to help us better protect ourselves and to protect our communities. Allister, thank you so much for being with us. Should we go right into it?
Sure.
Disclaimer. This episode is for education and scam awareness. Any personal stories shared reflect the speaker's experiences, recollections, and opinions. References to past events or individuals are not legal findings and are not intended to implicate any living person or family member. The word cat scammers used here is a colloquial reference to alleged deceptive conduct, not as a legal conclusion.
Most, if not all, of the people in my community are cat people or animal people. And lately, we've been talking a lot about pet-related scams. The common ones that we were talking about before are fake listings and fake sales and stuff, but it turned out it's a lot more than that. But before I get into the details, how about we set the tone with some of the stuff that you do and stuff that you educate people on? So maybe let people understand you a little bit. My first question here. So given your extensive experience across different forms of fraud, what are some of the universal targets or tactics that scammers typically employ to deceive their targets? So from your 30-some years of experience, what are some of these common things that you see?
One of the things is an affinity fraud. So somebody within your group, or perhaps somebody is introduced into the group and provides them an opportunity for fake products, or perhaps for some charitable cause. So affinity, they come into the group. Groups are really important to the people that are in them. You support one another, you share information. And if you ever belong to some kind of group, it sounds like you have a community going here. It's really important to the people in the group. And often in an affinity fraud, somebody within the group starts doing stuff, messing around, or somebody introduces themselves into the group. Quite often you might have an infiltrator, and they'll prey on the group and use that built-in trust, mutual support, and they'll use it to give people an opportunity. And often it might be an opportunity where you're going to lose your money. It's a fraud. But also these days with technology, I get dozens and dozens of either WhatsApp, text, or emails every day about something, offering me something, telling me that my bank account for a bank I've never heard of, there's a problem with it, and click on this link. So we're seeing a lot of technological assaults on you. And so it's really, that's the big thing right now, is they'll send out 10,000 SMS messages or WhatsApp or whatever texting program you use, and they try to get you to click on it. It's just throw enough stuff up against the wall and they're going to catch a couple people. And that's what they're actually looking for. But it's also, maybe you're on a chat board somewhere, you're on Facebook, on a Facebook group, and they'll be surfing around and they'll see, hey, listen, this is a group of people that seemed really connected on this one issue. And I'm going to start interacting with some of the people. And we call it pig butchering. And what they do
The
is
romance scams.
exactly, it's the
Oh,
same topic. And so they sit there. And the thing about fraudsters is that they're poly criminals. This might be their topic right now, but they've done Forex in the past, binary options, all sorts of different things. They're not disciplined on one thing. They will do anything to get your money. So we see a lot of this pig butchering right now. But romance scam is a perfect example of it, but it can be used for all sorts of other groups as well. And they basically just get to know you and bring you in and eventually make the pitch or get you to support something or say, listen, I'm going on a pet rescue and will you support me? So those are the things that we're seeing right now.
is it because the individuals in the group share like a commonality, or is it because it's somewhat homogenous? Like, why do they pick communities?
Because they use those great characteristics of a group, sharing information, supporting one another. If one of the people in the group is doing an event or is in need, then people are predisposed to help each other. And so they use those great characteristics of the group against the group, try to gain their trust. And people in that group, they want to help other people in the group. And if somebody infiltrates the group and uses those great feelings that the group shares, it's easier for them to get done what they need to get done.
Oh, because it's usually emotionally driven in a way. So it's already there.
It can be. It can be. They're
Yikes.
playing on your emotions. They're playing on
Yeah.
your emotions.
So that leads me to my second question. How do these fraudsters select their victims? Why do they seem especially drawn to compassion?
I think that's one of the groups that they try to exploit. But the reality is fraudsters will exploit anything, whether it's somebody that's lonely at home and all of a sudden somebody's talking to them, or
Right.
somebody that quite frankly is greedy and wants to get a lot of money, or somebody that's looking to cash in on something so they could leave their kids or their grandkids money and stuff. There's a whole bunch of different personalities that people bring to the table. And the fraudsters, if there's an emotionally driven people, then the pitch feeds on that. If it's somebody that's greedy, then they feed on that as well. They're very perceptive. They do this all the time. And they're really good baddies will sense the person that they're dealing with and try to fit their approach and the way that they execute to whatever that person is.
Makes me think, how a lot of times when people get conned or scammed, there's a question that people say all the time. Oh, how do they go to sleep at night? How do they have the heart to do this?
They sleep great. They sleep great.
Why? They don't feel it? They don't think they're doing anything wrong?
They might at times, but after they do it for a long time, some people are very compartmentalized and this is what I do. I rip people off and then I go and spend their money. There's people that this is just what they do. Maybe the environment that they grew up in, that's what happened. Or the people that they hang out with, they do it because they're part of a gang or a group of people that do this and they feel part of that community. Some people, they might feel guilty. They always feel bad when they get caught. I'll tell you that 100% of the time. But the reality is a lot of these people, this is their business. And if they rip you off, and they often are able to rationalize it somehow. You're super rich. If I take you for 10 grand, it's not going to mean anything to you. It's going to mean everything to me.
Oh, so they justify it that way. I hear
Often.
that a lot, even when they get arrested.
Yeah, absolutely.
What?
Absolutely. People, one of my specialties in the police was embezzlement. So
Ooh.
somebody's inside a company or an organization and you talk to them if they're willing to talk to you.
Ooh.
And they go, listen, they felt bad the first time. The second time, yes. Third time, no, this is easy. I like doing this. And then they rationalize what they're doing. I haven't gotten a raise in 3 years, or they owe me money from this thing that I came up with. Humans rationalize what they do. And at the end of the day, they don't even know how much money they've taken. I've had somebody in the interview room and I said, now, how much do you think, after we got over the fact that they did it, how much money do you think you took? They go, 5 or 6 grand. And then you start showing them photocopies of the checks or the Visa receipts or whatever they're using. And then you show them an Excel spreadsheet and they go, I didn't know it was $23,000. Often they don't even know what the take was. And so people rationalize these things. They put things out of their mind. Some of them feel guilty or bad about it. They always feel bad when they get caught. But the reality is people rationalize what they do all the time, or they're just sociopaths and this is what I do and I don't care what happens to you.
We're all interesting because from a lot of the scams that we hear here, one common thing that they say is you people make so much money, it's chump change to you.
Us and them.
Yeah.
Us and them.
Like at the beginning, we're like, well, who are you people? And then it's, oh, maybe they came from other countries where the income is lower. So they feel that people from richer countries don't feel a thing when we get scammed.
So they're rationalizing, you're rich. You can afford this loss. I need this, means this supports me or my family or whatever habit I'm into, or some grand scheme that I have to do something with the money. Oh yeah, that's part of that rationalization program.
So another thing that we noticed is we were looking into these pet related scams, not the ones that are sales related. So in Hong Kong, I think we've already caught on to the fake sales ad. So those ones we know that it still happens in North America where they have puppies or kittens for sale or even for adoption. Basically, it's like a super good deal. Either the adoption fee is next to none or you get some pedigree cat and dog and they just don't exist. None of them exist. But in Hong Kong, we don't really fall for those ones, but we fall for the adoption scams. It's basically someone going to you physically saying that they're like a volunteer from a shelter or something. And as soon as the animal goes into your hand, like it goes into your possession, then it becomes like an extortion or blackmail or whatever, because there's no contract. They almost always use aunties, it's never uncles. And then they drop it off to you. And then the next day you realize they called the cops and they said, oh, you stole a cat and the settlement fee is XYZ. Otherwise, press charges. So it's crazy. And that, for example, in that kind of scam, usually they don't just manipulate compassion, but there's this crazy urgency, like especially use injured animals or maybe pregnant moms that the water just broke. Somehow they timed it so great that they give you a cat. It's like, oh, look, the water broke. We need help. So in your experience, are these emotional appeals common across the other fraud types? And if so, why are they so successful other than just the urgency side of it? Like it must have
You know,
worked.
we see this in North America in grandparent scams where they get a call from somebody and these people are very deceptive and very insightful into what you're doing. And it's Allister. I'm in jail in Montreal and I need $5,000 to get bail. Don't tell my parents I've been arrested for impaired driving or whatever. We do see that a lot here, or we call it the CRA scam, Canadian Revenue Agency. This is the tax people. And we get something saying, oh, you're in trouble. You owe us $10,000 right now. Go to Western Union and send the money to us at this location. So we do get kind of that extortion or getting hit on the emotional side of things. And we do see that a lot. And I think the keys to combating all these things is the same. It doesn't matter what the scam is. But this is the thing about fraudsters. They're very novel. Whatever the next thing is, they're into it. Whatever the next thing is that they can get money out of people, they move to that very quickly and learn what they need to learn, figure out how they can do it and execute it without getting caught. And they're very quick. Every time they learn something new, it's a new startup. It's a new fraud startup.
So for these fraudsters, right, they just spend their time to better their craft and they never really learn the fact that they might get caught one day. Because it's a numbers game, right? The more you do it, the more likely you're going to get caught. So they don't learn that lesson, or even if they got incarcerated, they don't learn.
I can talk about the Canadian scenario is that fraud isn't seen as serious as other types of crime. So in Canada, the penalties for fraud are a lot less than they would be if you committed a robbery or something more serious than that. But there's also a certain psychology in fraudsters. They know it's going to end at some point, whether they get caught or like in a Ponzi scheme, it just blows up. It can no longer sustain itself. They tend to live in the moment. They spend the money. Quite often when we take down somebody that's doing a fraud, the money's gone. They've spent it. They've been leasing a car, living in an Airbnb somewhere or something like that. So they often, the ones that do this all the time, they live in the moment. And if they get caught, that's the price of doing business. And quite often it's winding down. They go, okay, see you later. And they just move on to the next thing, or they do the same thing somewhere else. There's a certain psychology about it because it is going to end, whether it's the police or it just ends. They know that and they just take advantage of the moment and quite often live in the moment.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they do know. Do they usually reoffend when they come back out?
Once they've done it once, the people do this all the time. And they just figure out ways to do it so they have less of a profile. They learn to be more efficient in it. There are people that do frauds one off and that's the end of it. And we see that mostly in embezzlement. They get caught and they're regular people that rationalize what they were doing, that we're going through a personal issue of some sort. But real fraudsters do this all the time. This is their business. And their thing is always, how do I do this better, quicker, with a bigger take, with less exposure for myself?
So getting caught is really just part of the job, right?
It's a tax. I think it's all psychology. How do we get people to using emotional drivers or the fear of missing out or really aggressive behavior, limiting the time, doing a really hard sell on somebody, using a lot of pressure sales tactics? It's all the same, no matter what the scam is. The tools that they use are always the same. Get into your heart. Oh, everybody else is doing this. I'm afraid I need to do this as well. Crypto's the big one where fear of missing out is just huge. Maybe I should get into crypto too, although they know nothing about it. They don't understand the risks,
Mm.
and they end up dealing with crypto firms that aren't registered with a regulator. But all the drivers are the same. We scare them. We make them cry. We make them feel like they're missing out on something. We
Well,
give them a need that they didn't know they had. Don't you want to put money aside for your grandkids so they go to university? Those types of things. All the drivers are all the same.
so they're actually really good salespeople too. Damn, wow, that's
They're the best.
insane.
They're the
That's
best.
they should have put it into something positive. I don't know if you would agree with this statement, but a lot of these fraudsters, if they were to direct their energy and effort into working a corporate job, I think they would have done pretty well.
They're certainly good. They're good at chatting. They're really good at psychology.
Mm.
And they're very practical because if, say, they're talking to you, Melody, and all of a sudden 5 minutes, they go, okay, she's too clicked down on what's going on. We're going to move on. They're very practical. It's okay, next. And so they are really good salespeople. And could they sell cars? Could they sell real estate? Probably.
Mhm.
They're being maybe driven by something else. There's a certain sinisterness to it as well. And I think people sometimes get into that as well. I'm a bad dude, and I want to do this. I'm making lots of money. I'm not reporting it to the revenue people. It's all going offshore through Bitcoin somewhere. And so I think sometimes a bit of hooligans as well.
I was going to ask you about that since, as you said, you talked to a lot of these criminals for interrogation or whatnot. I guess the victims often would ask, it's like, why don't they go find a job? Why don't they decide to do something good instead with all that intellect? Why not?
This is their job. Maybe they were out in the workforce and it didn't work for them, because we all know that a lot of people do jobs that they don't like or that they just have to do. And if you can do this with less hours and a bigger pay check out of it, and maybe not have to pay taxes and live a mobile life, a lot of this stuff is done online. You can do it from anywhere. We're talking 12 time zones away, you and I, and we're having this conversation. You can be anywhere in the world and do this as long as you're willing to time shift in your communications. I think people get into it. Once they get into it, especially if they're successful at it and they're very practical with it, and okay, it's over, move on, and then lie low for a little bit and then start up again, rename and all this stuff. And especially if you have a grasp of technology, sure, why not?
But for these scammers, when they're challenged or questions or you shake them up a little bit, well, not physically, by questioning, of course, they often become aggressive, or they even like shift tactics. Sometimes they zone out, regroup, and then they become another person. Can you share some of these behavioral patterns that you've noticed among these fraudsters when confronted or exposed or even interrogated?
Yeah, I think when you're facing one of these people and then you go, is this real? You said something inconsistent, and quite often they will move the conversation along really quickly, change the topic, throw a question back at you. They might belittle you. There's a lot of confusion. There's things going on, and they just keep talking and talking, and they use really high pressure sales tactics. And often they'll just say, don't you want to take advantage of it? In your case, don't you think this puppy is beautiful and really needs a startup in life and is in a bad situation, or this cat, but it's got some injuries. It's looking for somebody like you to bring it along, to let it get the medical attention it needs so it'll have a great life. And they just move the conversation along really quickly. They're very fluid. And they're really good at reading people's emotions, whether that means they need to talk to you or just the topic. It's like talking to a politician sometimes, right? They get asked a question, they just give the answer they want. It might not be to that question.
It's not
And
even
you see people,
related. Yeah.
well, yeah, exactly. They have their messages in their head. And if they've been talking to 200 or 300 people, they have this shtick, right? They just know what to do and to move on with it. And they're just really good at it. The people that aren't really good at it usually get caught. It doesn't work out for them. But there's a lot of people, they're just so fluid and just so good at this. And if you go on YouTube, there are a number of videos where you're listening to an actual fraudster talk to a victim. And it's incredible to listen to in real time. We have this TV view of how conversations take place and how crime goes down. And the reality, it's much more subtle than that. And just the way it plays out is actually really boring and would be terrible for TV. We're so used in North America to these interviews between police officers or investigators and suspects. In a TV show, you know all the background with the characters, there's been a certain amount of development, but in these things, it's actually very boring. If you ever listen to one of these people talk, and interviewing people that have committed frauds, the conversation between me and them, or the people that I'm with and them, is actually very boring. It's very subtle. That's just real life.
Is it because they're so good at it that they do a poker face, or is it just because that's the way it is?
You want people, if you can keep them from being scared and just have a normal conversation, you want to come across as a normal person. If you're committing fraud, you don't want people, you want to be too charismatic. You don't want to be too dull. You just want to be a normal person because you want people to feel comfortable with you and the idea of what you're trying to do there. You try to have a normal conversation, like you and I are having this conversation about some really serious issues here. Nobody's yelling. There's not a lot of arm movement, and we're just having a conversation. You're nodding your head, I'm nodding my head. And that's the way a lot of these conversations take place. And let's face it, a lot of the conversations are digital. It's on a text app of some sort, or an email, or on Messenger, or whatever it is. There's not a lot of dramatics. It's just information going back and forth, and they can sense by the way the conversation goes whether they're getting anywhere.
But what happens, say, the moment when they get confronted or exposed that you revealed some facts or something that they can't disprove? Do they have any telltale signs? Say, especially for the sociopathic ones, the ones that are really good.
They'll just start talking about something else, or say, oh no, sorry, you misunderstood. And let's face it, in conversations, even with your closest friends, if you're having a conversation, go, hang on for a second, I think you got the wrong idea here. And you rephrase things and you talk things out. And even if you sit there and go, I don't know, I think they actually said what I thought they said, but now they're saying this. And so they just keep moving the conversation along.
Do you think fraudsters are good at making people question their reality, including law enforcement? Do you think they're good at making us question that sometimes in conversation?
I've had people in the interview room and they're saying one thing, and it's obvious from the media, the paper or the pictures or whatever we have in front of them, that they did it. And they're still trying to convince me that they didn't do it. And in a way that they've already convinced themselves that they're innocent as well. That's incredible to watch some people. Because some people would go, yeah, you got me, Sheriff. And there's other people that to the day that they plead guilty, they're still saying they didn't do it. And that's just, they make themselves believe that. And they're trying to convince you that as well. And we've all faced situations in our lives where we're not accepting the reality of the situation. It takes us time to do that. And yes, when you question some of these people, they'll admit the fact's an issue, but they won't say they're guilty. Like, they admit that they did every action which would constitute a fraud, but it's very hard for them to psychologically admit that they actually committed a fraud. And as an investigator, you just live with that. Okay, everything that constitutes a fraud you've done, but you're not guilty of fraud. Okay, I'm cool with that. Because in the end, I'm not the arbitrator. I'm not the trier of fact. That's somebody else. It's interesting when you get people in a room, whether they're a victim or an accused, it's amazing what people will admit and won't admit and what their view of what happened is.
Like you said, you just have to live with it because sometimes they're lying to themselves as well.
Yeah,
think
well,
it's
in
very-
kind of the scenario that you've been laying out for me, I think it's really important that you know who you're dealing with. And if somebody says they're from some shelter somewhere and they're grabbing you in the street and trying to get you interested in something, I can understand why you're feeling that emotional pull. I think really important to know who you're dealing with. And if you feel uneasy, who is this person? Why are they picking on me? Where's this animal from? What's the deal? What's the ramifications of me getting involved in something where there's no contract? We're not in an office anywhere. We're not in a facility that looks like a rescue facility. Sometimes you have to say, listen, is this something I want to do right now? And maybe you go find an actual shelter organizations that's doing this, a local expression of that. And you go there and you deal with them. Quite often it's that high pressure sales tactics, their fear of missing out and helping this little animal. And you get yourself into a situation where, let's take a moment here. There's nothing that needs to be done right now. I have time to figure out what's going on. The antidote to these high pressure sales tactics is time and space. And so if you go, listen, this is something I feel very strongly about. I would like to rescue an animal, especially one that might have physical disability or a medical issue. So go to a shelter nearby, one that's established, that has a proper website, especially if they're a charity. I don't know how it works in Hong Kong where you are, but here, if you're a charity, you have to have a charity number from the Canada Revenue Agency. You can look them up, and on that website where it talks about that charity, there's often financial statements and other statements. It tells you perhaps the senior officers of the company. And so go to an established place and find that special little animal that you're going to put everything into to make sure that it has a good life. Get the proper paperwork. Is there a medical report? What shots have they had? All these important things that are really important to be a responsible pet owner, and deal with those people and make sure you know who you're dealing with. Perhaps isn't the best place to make that life decision for you and for an animal. Next thing you know, the police are showing up and you're getting extorted for thousands of dollars because you have no paperwork to substantiate what's going on. So sometimes do not succumb to those high pressure sales tactics, especially if they're really pulling on your heartstrings. If this is what you want to do, make sure you go to a legitimate organization. These days, you can look things up, you can go visit them. If you walked into a pet shelter and you say, listen, it's really heavy on my heart that I want to rescue some little animal, they will be so happy to see you. And you do all the paperwork, you do everything properly, and you go home with this little thing.
Sorry, just hold on. Somebody just walked by. Sorry, this is Lucky.
Oh, very cute. Very cute.
You're like, don't care. Don't
Don't
care.
care.
It's funny how you point that out, because with the adoption, I can see that. Instead of doing an adoption like street corner, I do understand that part. But for scams like the one that I gave them an example, it's more like they pose it as like an emergency risk. One similar scam that they saw in China from years ago was not in the animal world, it was in the human world. So
Yep.
I don't know how it works in Canada. I haven't been back for so many years, but when people pick kids up from school buses, like kids that are under 10 years old, the parents wait at the same place and then the kids get off of school. Is that what you guys do
Yep.
over there?
Yep.
So some parent infiltrate that group. So they'll look like they're a parent and they'll just walk alongside with some of these people and they'll chat them up, and they look like a grandma and auntie, usually female. And they'll pretend that they're picking their granddaughters. And so one day they're going to take a child that's got like a limb missing. Like it looks like she's got hit by a car, like something really bad happened to her, or her stomach popped open because she got ran over. You can even rent them like that. And they come crying. They're like, oh my God, Mr. Field. They're like, this is my granddaughters. Please help. And then people would freak out. They'll probably be like, okay, yeah, we're going to drive them to the hospital like 2 minutes away. Once the kid is in your possession, then the same thing happens. Oh, you just abducted my child. It's like, I didn't agree to this, blah, blah, blah. And of course, what they want is money. So how can people prevent this from happening if it's like a state of emergency? Because when there's accidents happening, that's not the person that goes through our mind. Like, I guess we don't even think about pulling our cell phone if it's really that urgent. We think about how to rescue the person. I've seen people getting into traffic accidents, and the last thing that's on my mind is, oh, let's pull out my phone and see if this is, oh.
If it's an emergent situation, and I'm relying on my experience as a police officer,
Mm.
if you're in a situation and it appears that somebody's been injured or something's going on, then you call 911 or whatever your equivalent is there and say, listen, somebody's in trouble here, or you get your phone going and take a video of what's going on. But the whole idea that you have to understand the situation that you're in, and yes, it's an emotionally charged situation. What is the best thing that you can do in that situation? If somebody is in a medical need or there's some kind of distress of some sort and you're not sure, then you call the authorities. And I know in some countries you can't call the authorities because they're not necessarily a really good organization you want to be involved in. But in a lot of Western countries, if there's something going on, it's like, okay, no, I'm going to call 911 or whatever it is, 999, whatever it is in your jurisdiction. And quite often that's going to sort it out the minute you're doing the correct thing as a citizen, which is bring the professionals here to deal with whatever the situation, whether it's the ambulance service or the fire brigade or the police. Quite often I have people coming to my door here and telling me all sorts of stuff. And I'm the worst person to do what you've just described to do too, because
I'll
of just
handle it.
Oh,
I
it's-
scammer and I go up to you. He's like, oh my God, my dog just got hit by a car. He's all bloody and stuff.
I go,
What would
okay,
you-
hang on, just stay out there. I'm going to call 911 right away. Oh, there's this dude out here and it looks like he's been involved in an accident.
And you
And
want car keys.
no, who's the best person to deal with that situation? The ambulance is going to be here in 4 minutes. And
Mm.
I'm not putting somebody in my car because it's better that the ambulance gets here or deals with it. A lot of the times people do things because they think they're doing the right thing. In a situation where somebody's injured or there's obviously a distress of some sort, then you call the professionals and you get them to deal with it, and you become just a really good witness to what's going on. You don't want to become yourself a victim of people. And I think in situations like this, and having done a lot of outreach, the really important thing we talk about is just common sense. And you should always question what's going on. You have to be aware of your personal safety.
Mm.
And even though I live in a suburb of Toronto and it's very safe here, even then somebody came and heard a loud bang and there's stuff going on the street in front of my house, I'm on to 911 right away. As I'm walking to the scene to see if there's something I can do, but saying, yeah, I'm outside of this address. I heard a big bang. It looks like there's been an accident. But there's somebody standing there and they say they're bleeding and stuff. Could you rush the ambulance, please? Not necessarily are any of us trained to deal with everything that we're seeing. So that's why you call the professionals. That's what they're here for. That's what they love to do. The fire department loves to come out and do stuff like that.
Yeah. Because when now thinking back, I'm like, I don't know, what could I have done differently? But you are right. Yeah, I guess call 999. That alleged scammer would have ran away if I called like
Exactly.
999 in front of her. But what I didn't do it intentionally is because I'm a YouTuber and my channel happens to be talking about animal encounters all over the world, right? So my
Yeah.
camera started rolling when I was going to rescue because literally the establishment is right there. It's just right across the street. So I was in
Yeah.
my PJs and I was running and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna tell my community about this because every time I encounter any animals, it's documented. So I'm like, okay, I'm going right now. I don't know what's going on. And I just left my camera there on the table as that alleged scammer was handing me happy. And
No.
she smells like rotten flesh. And she got like dangling
Oh,
digits with necrosis on it. And it's really disgusting. I'm not trained to look at that kind of stuff. So I freaked out. Like I just freaked. I fell apart. Oh my God, we're gonna do something. But it was the video that saved me because in that neighborhood, there's no CCTV. We don't. And it
yeah.
turned out this person was doing it to all the victims in her neighborhood. So all the rescuers or the fosters or the adopters became investigated for stealing, for theft, because I guess it's like
Uh,
criminal and then the cops have to work on it. But it took a very long time and we were all guilty until we're innocent, basically. And so we were all being investigated for a very long time. So if there's something we can do or learn how to prevent this or teach someone so that they don't fall victim to fraud, but also being accused of theft, it would be great. It was the video. I don't know what other ways I could have.
I love that video, and especially if you're the primary person dealing with whoever has approached you and your friend goes off the side and starts taking video. If they're a scammer, they're not going to like that video. They're not going to like the fact that you're taking their picture. They're not going to like the fact that the whole transaction, if I can put it that way, is being put on video and it's going to be used to exonerate you. I really like that idea. And oh, your cat is injured. Okay, let's walk down to the animal hospital at the end of the street and have them take a look at it. And when you start offering these practical safe solutions to it, they're going to move on to somebody else. I love the video though, because it just documents the situation. So even if the authorities come knocking, you go, yeah, I just dealing with that person. You want to watch
It
the
was
video?
completely by fluke,
Yeah.
camera rolling. I wanted it to because I was afraid that if she gave me any instructions in terms of how to feed medicine or any aftercare, because
Mhm.
she claimed that she took the cat for surgery. Long story short, it turned out it was a child's work. But anyway, the video was by fluke because I got the new iPhone. Because the older iPhones don't have the wide angle camera.
Mm,
And this one, I flukishly just left because I was freaking out, right? So I left it on the wide angle. So it captured everything,
everything.
including that person's face. So when I handed it to the cops, they were like, why do you have such video? I'm like, I'm not supposed to. It's just left rolling. So that's, I guess, otherwise I would have been framed for being like a cat stealer or something.
What I find, I don't know what it's like in Hong Kong, but I know in North America that as
Mm.
soon as something happens, everybody's got a phone. Everybody's
Um,
taking video of it. It's so helpful at a crime scene or an accident or something like that, because you see the police when they show up, they see people with their phones out and that, and then next thing you know, they're doing a bit of a, oh, let's do a little canvas here. If you witness something, you can upload it onto the platform of the news network and they're looking at it. The producers are looking at it. And if it's good enough, it's going to make it onto the news. And the police are the same way. They're going, oh, can you send us that video so they can get a picture of what's going on? I love the idea of a video to protect yourself. You're obviously somebody that cares a lot about animals. And if this scam is going on, they're finding people like you left, right, and center because they know you're going to want to do something to help this poor animal. And I think in a lot of these situations, there's a, what it would be really clear to me as not somebody like you that goes out and rescues animals and stuff like that. To me, it's obvious there's an issue, but what they're playing on is just the emotional driver where this is a very important issue. Other people in the neighborhood, that's hitting the button for you and you want to get involved. You want to be part of a solution and you're feeling so empathetic for the, not only the animal, but the person that's holding the animal. To me, it's very practical. Something's going on. Like it's very clear something's going on, but I'm not a pet rescuer. I don't go out and do those types of things, but just their use of that driver to zero in on you. And they might have tried 3 other people that just walked away and said, oh, it's not my problem. But then they hit on somebody like you that this is your passion. And there's probably a whole bunch of listeners, people watching this video that this is their thing. This is the thing in life that's so important to them. And what I like about that is it is an important thing. Somebody needs to look after the rights and health of animals and stuff like that. And I think it's admirable what you do and what you talk about. And these people, they're going to target you. If they figure out it's you, say they did it 7 times and they finally came across you, then they hit the gold mine, right? Because you want to do something about it. It's interesting. Do they target people? Yeah.
They
Often
do.
it's a hit and miss thing. But once they get you, they know this person really cares. They're going to want to do something about this. This I can work with.
Yeah, actually, you touched on a very good point. So let me tell you a little bit more about this story. I'm just somebody who really likes animals in the neighborhood knows. And they know that I'm a YouTuber because everywhere I go, I do live stream. I
Yep.
make content. So that my neighbors know me for being the girl to talk to if they have anything cat related because I got mice at home as well. But anyways, another story. Thinking in hindsight, after all the investigation was over, the cops actually told me that I was targeted. And because they pieced it together for me because I only met her for about 5 minutes. The dialogue was about 5 minutes in a local pet-friendly coffee shop. I don't know if you guys have that in Toronto, but in Hong Kong, we have the culture of having pet-friendly coffee shops and
Yep.
shops, and we have something called the shop cat culture, meaning these cats live in a bookstore, in a corner store, in a convenience store. Do you guys have that?
I know there are pet friendly places where you can bring in animals and they can sit there. Like a lot of places will have water bowls out for dogs and stuff like that. And I don't know if it's quite as extensive as you would have in Hong Kong,
We
but
have a
there is,
lot.
yeah, there are places that cater to people that are out walking their dogs, and you'll see them out on the patio at like Starbucks or something like that. Some places have like little treats for the dogs and stuff like that. And I don't know if it's quite as extensive as in Hong Kong, but people do cater to a certain
Yeah.
extent to it.
Yeah, I was going to one of the coffee shops to get coffee with my cat, the one that you saw with the really pointy ears.
Mm-hmm.
And in Auntie, like as I say many times, aunties actually have her defenses down because who would suspect an auntie? And she came up to me, and I guess even in Asia, when people don't really talk to strangers, we're kind of more reserved here. So it's not like people hold conversations with a stranger. But in a pet-friendly cafe, that's quite common because you pet people's dogs, you pet people's cats, you strike up conversations really easily, and people love talking about their pet, me inclusive. So she struck up a conversation, and she introduced herself as a volunteer. And unfortunately, in Hong Kong, I don't know where this came from because everybody I talk to, even the locals here, we don't have an answer. Is when somebody calls themselves a pet or cat or dog volunteer, people attach some sort of benevolent characteristic. They attach authority to it. Maybe because they think about SPCA, where these volunteers have a proper badge and they're registered with their SPCA. But there's a lot of, because in Hong Kong, the shelters are not regulated. I could call my place a cattery, right? I think there's more regulation for dogs, but less so for cats. So this person claims that she has a cattery, and it seems very real because she has a shop that's right across from the coffee shop, and it's about 40 square feet. It has 18 cats in there. But then the normal person might think, oh, maybe it's just like a shop that's used to expose the animals. Maybe there's actually like a bigger place somewhere else at the end of the day, or maybe it's upstairs. So we don't think too much about that. But it turned out that's all there is. It's 40 square feet. It's just used as like a shop front. So it's on a corner store, so it has maximum exposure. So it seems very real. You're like, oh, yeah, my shelter's just right there. We're just collecting phone numbers because it's like a neighborhood watch thing. It's kitten season right now. So I see that you come with your cat. It seems like you really like animals. And so can we have your phone number that if one day we need fostering or rescues that we can call you up? So I'm like, okay, well, she's not asking for anything. It's just a phone number, whatever. Right. And it was just a short conversation and it seems really harmless. But it turned out it's not the first time she saw me in the coffee shops because in the conversation that she had with me, thinking in hindsight and what she told the cops, she knows so many things about me. I'm like, wow, that's insane. And even with the other shops, like the bookstores or the fabric stores that have shop cats. So in Hong Kong, to have a shop cat, basically they're not pedigreed because they're working cats. So you don't want people to steal the rag doll, right? And they eventually just became a shop cat. So it tugs at those people's heartstrings and people can identify with it and they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. But once they hand over a phone number, it's the beginning of the nightmare because when she flexes that scheme on them, they own a ground floor shop. That means they can get harassed every single woman. And that's exactly what happened. And a lot of people give in. And so they end up paying, up over and over again until they can't. It's crazy, isn't it?
Wow.
So
That thing about meeting you though,
Yeah.
She meets you, probably gets your name, gets your telephone number. Next thing you know, she does a deep dive and you're like, well, when you reached out to me, I was looking at your LinkedIn. I was figuring out who you are, where you're from, went and sampled some of your podcasts and things like that. Once you hand out some personal information, then it begins. They do a bit of a deep dive, and anybody with a few open source intelligence skills can find out a lot about somebody. It's crazy. You talk about pig butchering. It had started with you, right? She did an intro to you and said a few things about herself, got probably more information. What I find is really good people, you're one of those people, we leak information. We don't know we do. And I'm the same way. We leak information and scammers love that. They just suck it up like a sponge. And so, okay, they got your name, you get a telephone number. And once you have a name and a telephone number, you can start doing some searches and they figure out the police told you that you were targeted. And basically what she did was she gathered intelligence on you. She created a picture and decided, okay, this approach that I'm going to do is going to work with her because maybe she's watched some of your YouTube things or listened to your podcast and she gets a sense of you. And so when it's time to target you, she has the information that she needs to do so. And as a regular person, and I'm exactly the same way, we had a conversation before you turned on the tape and we learned a lot about each other very quickly. I met, I don't know how many, 3 or 4 cats. I'm not sure how many are there. And they do exactly the same thing. We all do. Like you're a YouTuber. You love to talk to your audiences and it's a back and forth thing. It's a very communal type of thing. And they gather intelligence on you. And so when they need to zero in on you, they have what they need to be successful. And they cause you a lot of aggravation for a year. And unfortunately, and it should be anybody, but you seem like a really decent person. And so, you would take that to heart. It's a hassle for you for a year to go through the police coming by and all these allegations. And it's a terrible experience.
Horrible. And I've been stalked on every day I go home. It's almost like I have to be a thief because she'd be sitting downstairs. I think there's something wrong with her. I should use crazy glue to glue my door shut.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
insane. So that's why I want to learn if there's something that I can educate my community in terms of how to avoid all this. I do anything I can so that there's no more me's and there's no more happies. Now back to the conversation. From your professional experience, can you provide some examples from your investigative work or law enforcement work in terms of how individuals can successfully deal with harassment or intimidation when it's happening? Because I was just taking a hit. I just took it. I didn't know how to deal with it. But it's really stressful.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is actually preventative. If I'm going to have an important conversation like the one we're having right now, I actually prepare for it. And now that you've been through this and that you've shared your experience with your listeners, I think it's really important that people think about that. One of the things we would do as police officers, we're going to a call, especially if it's a higher priority call. So there's an emergency of some part, and we're listening. We're reading a computer screen to get some details. Not the person driving the car, but the other person in the car reads the details out. We're listening to the radio as they're updating us with more stuff. And you pre-plan how you're going to deal with whatever's going to happen based on your experience and your training. And it sounds pretty ominous, but the reality is now that your listeners have listened to your experience, which you're sharing with them, which is a huge thing. One of the things that we do when we're doing outreach, wherever I've worked, is we tell stories. And we tell sometimes other people's stories. Sometimes we tell our own stories. And by you telling the story, now everybody has an idea of what you've dealt with. And they may know somebody else that's dealt with a similar situation. What's important for people right now is to think ahead of time how they would deal with. And so as a police officer going to a call, we're going, okay, this is what the call is. My experience tells me that it's important to understand what's going to happen and what my response is going to be and how I am feeling emotionally going into this. And so once you know what your story is, your listeners are going, okay, if somebody comes up to me in a similar situation, how am I going to deal with this? And it's, I'm sorry, what are you asking? Your cat's injured. Okay. You need a vet, you need an animal hospital. What can I do to help you do that? Or maybe we should call somebody, maybe you should go down the street to the vet hospital, and having a playbook already in your head about how you're going to deal with this in terms of how are you going to answer these questions. And so the whole idea is not to get involved in this and not to get involved where you're being extorted the money. So planning out how you're going to deal with a situation like that. And there's a bunch of other things in life. I don't walk down that street because it's really dark and people have been harassed down the street. I'm going to stay to a main street, walk near crowds. We all do things in situations where we feel uncomfortable. And now that people have experienced your uncomfortableness for a year, pre-planning how you're going to deal with a situation like this and having almost like a canon in your head. Okay, these are some of the things that I would say. This is what I would tell people to do. Rather than wait for it to happen, it's important to be pre-plan how you're going to deal with certain situations. That's why I came on this podcast, because you had obviously experienced something. I didn't have the full story, but from the questions that you were asking, a little bit of content that you gave, I went, this person has been through something nasty and they want to share it with other people in their community. And so to me, the most important thing is that you're now aware of what happens and how the scam works. What are you going to do to stay out of it? And what are you going to pre-plan in terms of what you're going to say and do to keep yourself out of it? So I think that's really important. In the end of the day, you always have the ability to say no right up front and just get out of the situation. I am the worst person when somebody comes to the door of my house. They come in and they knock on the door and they open the door and I say, I'm not interested, and I close it. Because the reality is, if I'm giving to some children's charity for overseas development, I'm already doing that. I'm not interested in whatever political party. And so I've already decided how I'm dealing with people at the front door. Some person comes to the front door and says, you need a new roof. It's, thank you very much. Close the door. Because we put up a roof like 6 years ago. It's a fraudster. It's somebody that's trying to throw a curve and get me to drop 10 grand. So to me, it's pre-planning. It's going, listen, I'm not interested. Or what do you actually want from me? And you use that term auntie. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Like, it isn't something within kind of the culture that I grew up in that we would use that term. That term would be used for like my parents' best friends. I would call them aunt and uncle. But there's this community thing in where a person like that has a certain prominence and importance. And it's interesting that those are the people they use to get into you, is the people that you would have reverence for, that there's a certain way that you address them within your community. I think it's being pre-planned for those situations, which is why I'm glad that you're sharing the story, although it sounds like it was a terrible story. Listeners are going to go, I don't want to be a victim of that. So I'm going to make sure I don't get into this situation. And I'm going to remember what happened to Melody. And I'm going to remember this guy, Allister, that was talking about stuff about pre-planning and just being very practical in that situation. But what can I do? What should I do? And there's nothing wrong with backing away from the situation, because there's no legal obligation for you to help them. And just say, listen, I'm not sure what you want. Do you want me to call the animal shelter? Do you want to, it's just down there. And just knowing where some of these resources are to keep yourself out of that. But I think that's the best way to approach it, is to use this lesson, which you're supplying, and try to keep yourself out of it.
That's really interesting, because before this episode, I already recorded 4 episodes with the shelter owners about the usual protocols, or the standard protocols, so to say, when adopting animals. So people have a good framework and good expectation, especially for the first time adopters. Because for these kind of scammers, they usually target people who are either very empathetic, or they use just bloody animals that basically makes us panic, or they target first-time adopters who have no idea what that protocol is like. They don't even know
Exactly.
what are to be
Exactly.
expected. Because in this scam, what happens is that I was talking to the people. I think there's at least like 200 victims. You can
Wow.
imagine, yeah, it's crazy. And what I noticed is that, like what you said, it's very fluid. Mine was only one form of it. The other ones are not, including the ones where she would go into the shops, is she'd go for younger people who's never had a cat and they want to do good. So they choose to adopt instead of buying. They focus on that a lot. And the shelter, it says, we do not take donations. We never take donations. We only take goods. We're a food bank. So people's guards are down even more. But of course, every time is an exception. We spent our life savings. So can you cover us? So now, thinking in hindsight, I was only a foster. I was supposed to foster for a period of time. And why are fosters supposed to compensate her for her surgery, which probably didn't even exist? At that time, I was like, why are you asking me for $50,000? Like, I couldn't even rationalize, like, why? But now thinking back, I'm like, I'm just a foster. What am I paying you? Even a doctor shouldn't pay. Like,
She's using that emotional driver, though. She knows you've got a big heart for this issue, right? And you want to help. And that's one of the things fraudsters really take advantage of people. Once they figure out what your weakness is, what was really at the core of your person, it's a redeeming character. But that's the one that they're going to exploit. And that's why, if you can give yourself a little bit of space and time, you're going, what is practically going on here? What is the actual common sense of this? Why am I fostering when I'd be paying $1,000 bill? Isn't that their role in this? It's not my role. It's my role to help with the recovery or whatever. And if you can get that space and that time so you can clear your head and ask those questions, what is going on here? Because nothing needs to be done right now. They use these high pressure sales tactics and just push, push. If you can give yourself that space and just a little bit of time to think this through clearly so your emotions clear,
Mm.
and you can go, and hopefully you ask the right questions, they move on to somebody else or they get scared off. But it's so important to give yourself that space. And time again, when you're talking to a victim of a fraud, it's that really high pressure that these people put on you, and they figure out what your weakness is, your love of animals or whatever it is, and they just push hard. And once they get you the momentum going in the conversations, chances are they're going to be successful in what they're trying to do to you. And that's why taking the time, giving yourself a little distance so you can get that perspective. Why would I have to pay for the surgery or special meds or whatever is part of the scheme? I think that's the biggest takeaway from this conversation, is pre-planning what you would do in this situation. And number two, getting the space so that you can figure out what's going on here and get a clear head. And maybe there's somebody with you and they go, give you a little nudge. What are you doing? Let's step and let's go around the corner and talk about this for a second.
Yeah.
And do we actually understand who this is, what this situation is? And if we go back to talk to her, turn on your phone, planning this thing out, especially you have I call it a wingman, a partner. If you have a wingman or a partner, play this a really smart way. But I applaud and people that foster or people that adopt, or this is their issue. I think it's wonderful because there's often a need. I don't know how many cats you have there, Melody, but I think I've been introduced to 3 or 4. I don't know.
A dozen.
A dozen. Okay.
A-
I think I've been introduced to 4 so far. I can't remember their names. I think it's a wonderful thing. And that's what fraudsters like to use to get to you, is those wonderful characteristics and those things that are important in life and really at the heart or the core of your souls.
You guys see that all the time, I guess. But now, just question off to the side is
Yeah.
because you said like the space, because they're trying to use the high pressure, the high pace sales tactics. So it's like dragging it to a boring pace.
Mm.
So that
Well,
there's
there's one
boredom.
thing. There's a conversation that takes place between, say, somebody like me, an investigator, and the suspect, or even the victim when you're talking to them. When there's a conversation going on, and now if they have to amp up the pressure, like the pressure isn't always loud. The pressure is often continual conversation, Melody. Like, look at this thing. It needs somebody like you just look after it for till tomorrow. And the pressure isn't always loud and boisterous. Sometimes it's just a lot of talking, and they're psychologically boxing you in or emotionally boxing you in. They just keep talking and they keep talking, and they're very deliberate about it. It isn't necessarily like on TV. Real police work and real crime usually is very subtle. And like there's often you'll see a video of a crime taking place and you go like, is there actually a knife in that guy's hand? I can't even see it that well. And so a lot of these things are very subtle. Like people will be walking by as you're having a conversation with somebody and they don't know that this person's setting up an extortion to catch you in something because it doesn't look like anything. And we're just so used to being fed things on TV or on a streamer, like, to sell a show, that it has to be sensationalized. There has to be huge movements and emotion and things like that. But a lot of this stuff is just transactional because they want it to feel like a real thing. They want it to just flow like a normal conversation would flow so that you feel comfortable. You lower your guard. And like when I talk to suspects, this is the way I talk to them. I'm not yelling at somebody. I'm not banging on a table. I'm just
It's
slowly
usually
working
not like
away.
that, right?
And there's a couple of videos in the Canadian law enforcement world. One of them was a Colonel Williams, who was a high-ranking Air Force officer who ended up murdering 2 people and doing a bunch of break-and-enters. And if you see the Ontario Provincial Police Polygraph Examiner did the interview, and if you watch this interview, it is the most boring thing that you've ever seen. But at the end, this Air Force officer gets into a corner and ends up having to admit to certain things. And there's another one. It was an Armed Forces lieutenant
Mm.
who was compromised by the Russians, and they show part of the interrogation. A Royal Canadian Mounted Police interviewer interviews him, and you just see how subtly the conversation goes along until this person, eventually they can't lie anymore, and they introduce a little bit of evidence here and there, and they just keep moving along. A lot of these things are very subtle, and it's just not like TV. And even when the crimes are being committed, it's actually very boring.
Yeah, because that's something I was going to ask you off camera, but since we have this conversation already, I always thought that something was exaggerated, but I didn't know which part. So now you just answered it. Real
Most of
life,
it, most of it,
it's
most of it.
super boring. Oh my gosh. Now, in
And
your experience with fraudsters or scammers, doesn't matter what kind, do you think they are using technology more and
oh,
whenever they can? And if so,
absolutely. I think COVID actually accelerated that because everybody was inside. And
mm,
so what's great about technology for them is that when you have a phone or a laptop, you're actually inviting somebody into your house. You're doing
yeah,
finances on it. You're talking to friends. You're taking photos, and they can send out 1,000 SMS messages. And
mhm,
if two people get back to them, click on a link, and they send out, they're so ingenious about things. I literally get 2 or 3 emails a day on my cell phone
mm,
telling me that there's a problem with my bank account for a bank that I've never heard of or that I've never banked at. And
mm,
so technology allows them to cast a wider net quicker, more efficiently. So rather than come up to you in your situation on a street corner and you have a conversation, they're trying to have 1,000 conversations at once. They're
mm,
throwing the net out really quickly, and they can hide behind a picture of somebody else.
yeah,
So when it comes to an investigation, who are we looking for? So they are using technology, and there's generations older than me that don't really feel comfortable with technology. And so are hitting on links that take them somewhere where the next, they're putting in their credit card number with all the essential information so that these people are now flipping that information over and using the credit card. Technology has been a boom for the bad guys because they can do a lot more quicker with less exposure. They're not standing on a street corner beside you and you're filming them. You don't know who they are. They can be in another country. You and I are talking, and there's a whole Pacific Ocean between us. And it's very possible because of technologies. They make a phone call and the computer changes the number the next time they send another phone call. And
yeah,
so it makes it a lot easier for people. So it's important to know who you're dealing with. And if
mm,
you're thinking about donating money to a
mm,
shelter, you look up the shelter. What does the website look like? Are they nearby? Can you walk by and see? Do they have a charitable number? Do they have a business registration number? If you're going to give $20 or thousands of dollars to it, you should really know who you're dealing with. And it's so important. If it's an activity that might be registered, like you need to register with a government agency to be able to act in that area, you should be able to look them up and find out if they're registered. And then you look on the website and does everything look good? And then make your decision. It's so important not to click on links. Somebody comes to the door and says, "Do you want to donate to this thing?" No, thank you. Now, I might want to,
mm,
but then I'm going to go out and find the proper website for them, see what they're doing. How can I confirm this information? Often in talking to groups of seniors, they say they're bank security. I said, well, then what I suggest you do is you hang up, you grab your client card, you flip it over and you look
yeah,
at the number in the back of the client card and you phone them directly and they'll say, why are you calling us? Somebody said they were from security, they have a problem. They go,
mm,
I'm sorry, you don't have any problem. Like, it's so important to go primarily to the organizations that you're dealing with, the way that you normally properly communicate with them. And that's the way that you deal with things like that, is to not take people at their word and make sure that you go to the source to make sure things are good.
You know how some people, instead of flipping the card back and looking at the number at the back of the card, they'll Google it and they'll look for the first number. And a lot of times they run into the ads. And the
Or
ads is set up by the fraudsters.
they go to a website and it's spoofing the original websites. We're seeing a lot of that right now where it's
Yeah.
just a little bit off. If you look at the URL number at the top of the page, it's .net versus .com, or there's a slight spelling variation, or
Mhm.
just the way that the name of the bank or the financial institution or the company that you're dealing with is slightly different. And so it's actually better that if you have a bank card, if you're dealing in the banking scenario, that you
Mm.
call the number in the back of your card, or you set up your profile properly with the bank, and that's where you communicate with them from, rather than hitting a link in a WhatsApp message or a text message or whatever it is. It's so important to deal primarily with the organization the way that it was set up to be dealt with. We have something called CRA scam. So the Canadian Revenue Agency, people are getting texts and stuff from them all the time. Like, the CRA doesn't deal in texts. They
Mm.
send you a letter.
Yeah.
Anytime you hear from them that way, you don't do anything about it. Or if you're worried, you call them. And so dealing with these organizations that you have to deal with, you deal with them primarily with the primary ways that you know that you can actually talk to somebody that's legitimate.
Yeah, but as you said before, they work really hard to better their craft. There is a scam that was happening in China. Even the locals in China fell for, which their scam awareness in China is really high because, in my humble opinion, like, I mean, Asia, specifically China, we're just a border away. There's a lot of scams happening in China. You know what WeChat is, right?
Mhm.
They pretend to be the police hotline for that province, and they somehow verified themselves. And then they call the people up and they said there's something wrong with their passports or whatever. And it seemed very legit because they would go on a video call with people. There's a fake police station, everybody in uniforms, and there's like police working in the office and stuff like this. They would get them to send money and say, okay, go, you're going to send this money so that we can bail whoever out. And there's actually like people who look like the lighting is funny, but they're pretending to be that person's friend who's locked up. It was like, your friend is locked up, but the whole establishment is staged. And people are like, oh my God, if these are paid actors, like that's a pretty good setup. Yeah.
That's commitment to the role.
But it's still bad. Like how to prevent it. Now, talking about prevention, given your extensive outreach efforts, what key messages about fraud preventions have resonated the most with the communities that you've interacted with?
People need to understand what their risk is, especially for financial crime. Can you afford to lose $10,000? No. But also the fear of missing out, knowing that's a driver for people. Oh, everybody else is involved in this thing. Maybe I should be involved as well, without realizing whether it's actually good for them. But the main one, it really is the high pressure sales tactics, that giving yourself a moment to walk away from the situation and do your research. That antidote to high pressure sales tactics is time and space. And do not jump into something that's going to give you, in your case, a year of hurt. And it's so important. There's no deal, there's no transaction that has to be consummated at that moment, that you can walk away and go, do I want to donate to this person's walking around and they're looking for donations for this shelter? I don't know if this person is actually a representative of that shelter. So they have some name plaque hanging down from their neck. Anybody with a computer can print anything. I don't know if they're really that person. So maybe I want to donate to that animal shelter. I'm going to go down there and meet with them and make sure that everything's okay. I just think that giving yourself space and time to make an informed decision and doing a little bit of research. We all like to do things the easy way, the quick way. We want to have an impact. We want to impact quickly to help other people. So I think that's probably the biggest one to me, is just giving yourself the time so you can do the research, have a clear view of what's going on, and maybe ask somebody else some advice, close friend or whatever it is. And it's just so important to gain perspective and not jumping into something that's going to end up hugely financially draining on you, or next thing you know, you're being investigated by the police when you've done absolutely nothing wrong. I think that's the main one for me. Don't jump on something because everybody else is, but the main one is giving yourself that time and distance to have perspective and be able to do research and decide and make sober decision. Is this something I want to get involved in? Is this something I should be involved in? And if so, how do I feel comfortable with everything I know about it?
$10,000 goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that was exactly the amount that she asked for. It was 50,000 Hong Kong dollars. It's interesting how I said, do the research. In my example, couldn't do any research because the scammer doesn't have a digital footprint by design. So when people searched it up, there's nothing. I think they have
that in itself, though. That in itself is a red flag, right?
Who in 2025 doesn't have social media or any presence?
Everybody does.
Exactly.
Any presence. So they might have one, but not in that name. That's
it's
the
private.
thing.
It turned out it's private, and they use it as a portfolio. So the scheme goes like this: this person would recruit animals by talking to the neighbors. They said she would go around and ask people for the animals that people reject. And she would start to shame the kill shelters. The ones that they will put down, I will take. The ones that they think that they can't cure, I will take. The ones that you think that the vets can't handle, I will take, as if she got some miracle druggers. So people thought, okay, if she can, yeah, sure. Oh, wow. When they look on her social media, she has a lot of cases of successful rescues of these rejects, right? Then she'll recruit these, and then obviously keep them sad, sick, injured. Basically, they're not treated. They're alive. They're not dead, but they're not treated, and they're in pretty bad shape. What shelter adopts out sick or injured animals? It's usually the other way around, right? They usually get them, they get them treated, but it's the other way around. So she'll get them fostered, saying that she's got no money, she's got no space, and you'll think, oh my God, this RD is so bad. Like, she's just an individual rescuer. Maybe she has no resources. So people take them, and then she'll do one of a few things, either what happened to me, what happened to the shops, or she'll make somebody sign a contract, which it was exposed, somebody exposed online in a personal post, which it says, once you signed it, You agree that she is the owner, but you're only a paying party. And from that moment on, anything that happens to the cat within 6 months, she can sue your pants off. And then the second one is she has access to your premises 24/7. You have to answer to her messages at any time. And if she wants to come to your house, you have to. And even the victim said you have to give the Hong Kong ID, which is the same as people's social security number. And you have to give them your utility bills and income proof. Like, wow, that's a lot to ask for an adoption, right? But when people hand those over, they're going to get extorted and they're going to get stalked on. And that's why a lot of these people aren't speaking up. And even for the people who have successfully adopted by paying up or whatnot, after they pay, after they sign, they have to do a number of social media posts to praise her goodness. So
Yeah.
it's a positive loop, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quite a good scheme, isn't it?
Yeah. And some of the things that you were talking about, the Hong Kong card and like utility bills and your name and stuff like that, there's some key information on those documents that can be used for other types of fraudulent activity, for financial crime. There's no reason you should hand that over to anybody for
Yeah.
any reason other than certain types of investments. There's no reason for that. And once they have that type of information, they can sell it on, they can broker around to other people so they can use it to do all sorts of other financial criminal activities. Those types of pieces of information just give them so much information that they're going to sell on.
They just reuse it. So it's not just, it's like pig butchering scams. Once they've milked all the money out of the victims, they turn them into money mules, do they not? Jail. For the audience who doesn't know what that is, the pig butchering scams are the romance scams where they ask for money.
Yeah.
It's a lover that usually the fridge is empty and somebody's sick and they need money or whatnot. They need money to go unite with the person. And then once they have all that, all the money is gone. I've heard that there was a case in Hong Kong. I think there was an American or Canadian woman. She's in her 70s, and she almost had to go to jail here because her boyfriend said he bought her a ticket to meet somewhere, but it was some African country. She thought it was an exotic trip, and his buddies were there, but he was never there. And he said he was going to meet her in Hong Kong and said that he got her some clothes for her and her daughter. But it turned out all the buttons were actually like drugs. Like they were compressed. And then it turned out when she came to Hong Kong, she had no idea that she was a drug mule. It was a really big news. And that person, I think nothing happened to her at the end, but she was locked up for almost a year here while they were investigating. I think she almost killed herself.
What's scary about especially financial fraud is that I know in the Canadian scenario, only about 10% of all financial crime is reported to the authorities. And so however bad the numbers are, and they're bad here, there's 10 times as many people that have never reported to the police because of the stigma. I don't want people to know that I got scammed. They'll think I'm stupid. Or if they're older in age, I don't want my kids to know because then I might lose my kids are going to then ask me to make some decisions so that I'm not as vulnerable. And for every story that you're telling, there's probably 10 stories that haven't been told, that haven't been reported to the police. So it's so important that if people do get scammed, that they do report it to the relevant authorities just so they have an idea what's going on. That can tailor their investigative pursuits or crime prevention and community outreach. It's really important that people report those things. Just so today you told us a pretty complicated story about what happened to you. And that's the only way we can teach people and we can understand what's going on is if somebody comes forward and tells their story. It's really important that people know what's going on. The romance scam got really bad during COVID because people were lonely and everybody's looking for love and they're looking for connections and for that special person. There was a lot of romance scams going on at that time because people were shut in and they wanted to make a connection. The reality is a lot of people meet their partners online these days. So why wouldn't somebody go out and do that? But it's when you start getting into sending people money and meet me somewhere and you end up getting robbed, or in this extreme situation where you end up inadvertently bringing drugs into a place that, and most countries take a very stiff view of that. It's important to know who you're dealing with and what are the risks to you. Are you making the right decision? Talk to somebody else about it. I think there might be some issues with this. I think we need to ask a few questions, do some checks, and please don't send them any more money until we figure this out.
This actually just smoothly transitions into our last set of questions. From your experience, why do people feel that they can't or shouldn't speak up? Because in my experience, Well, I was being bombarded by her, by the stalking, by the law enforcement, by everything. And of course, by treating Happy as well, because I didn't know if she was going to live the next day. So every day I had to go see her in the ICU. So a lot of emotions. Now stepping back, I was like, I could call the police and made a report on my end. Why is she the only one that's making it on her side? And I didn't realize that until the whole thing was over, which is like a year after. There was no shame from my side, but I was just really scared because I even got death threats. What are some of the reasons that you see from the people that you dealt with before?
I think
you
people
reported?
feel that people are going to think I'm stupid. People are going to think that I'm gullible. I don't want people to think that. There'll be shame. People will think less of me. Or if you're a vulnerable person, say you're older, or for some reason you're vulnerable, I'm going to lose my independence. People are going to say, listen, mom, dad, I think we're going to need to help you with your finances and make sure what's going on, and they'll lose their independence. Those are the reasons why people don't report it, because the reality is I've had nuclear engineers get ripped off. I've had people with very manual jobs getting ripped off. Anybody has the capability to be a victim in this on any day. And so a lot of people think there's shame and they're just embarrassed and they don't want to lose their independence. And those are really strong feelings. And that's why a majority of people, if they get ripped off, do not report it.
Well, somewhere they don't trust law enforcement.
Yeah, no.
I'm sure you have, right?
Canada is an immigrant nation. Everybody came from somewhere else. And so there are people that come from other countries where the police cannot be trusted, where it is not an institution that inspires trust, where they may have had negative experiences with the authorities. And so there are times in communities where there's a lot of newcomers where they might not feel that even if we went to them and said, listen, we're investigating this thing that happened. Did this happen to you? And the answer is, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh,
Yeah, and sometimes there might be a language barrier or a cultural barrier to it. But being an immigrant nation, Canada, that's what it is. Everybody came from somewhere else. And sometimes there's people that come here that come from places where the police shouldn't be trusted. And so when they come here, that's why outreach is so important. So going into cultural settings and talking to people sometimes in their own languages is really important to build up a rapport between those communities and law enforcement or other government agencies that do things. Those are some of the activities that I've been involved in the past. And they're very important. You go to a newcomers group, you go to a community center and you're talking to a newcomers group. And sometimes you even do the presentation differently. You sit around in a circle in a chair and you talk to people like you would be talking about home. Even the setting that you have these conversations are so important. So that's the real issue, especially in a place like Canada, where we need 250,000 new people into the country every year to keep the economy going. So that's a real concern. And the only way to deal with that is outreach and dealing with other people in that community that you've already developed relationships with and having really good conversation and creating like pamphlets and information and websites in languages that people feel comfortable is another thing. All those things are used to help negate that. But the reality is some people, it's going to take a generation before they'll start reporting things to the police.
yeah. I noticed that too after coming to Asia for 14 years now. Yeah, I've been to many countries where people actually, the first 10 things that they think about are law enforcement when anything happens to them.
That's right.
It's really weird. Like in Hong Kong, it's still where it used to be a British colony, right? So we still have a lot of that. It's still quite, I mean, people still go to the police. But unfortunately, in my case, when I went to the police, it was really bad. They told me like off the record that maybe I should just pay her like a lesser sum and get rid of her. It was really bad recommendation.
To negotiate a buyout.
Yeah, but it was, they're all like, why would you suggest me to do that? And the officer, that particular officer said, oh, yeah, well, it's a very sticky situation. We've seen her many times. We don't know what to do because she knows how to play on the gray areas of law. Because this person in real life is actually a registered social worker. Shame on her. So that's where, I guess, where she learned all the gray areas of law, applied to bad things. But another officer came to me and said, you don't listen to my colleague. That's not legal. I was like, oh, thanks. Thanks for the suggestion, but thanks for being honest. I'll pretend as if I didn't hear anything. But in closing, I want to encourage my community. Don't be afraid to speak up. You're not stupid. There's no shame in this, and there's nothing to be afraid of. Because look at me. I've got death threats for like over a year. I've been stalked. I've been harassed. I'm still being harassed right now. In fact, the new development is because I am the only person in the community, despite the fact that she knows where I live, that I'm not afraid to go to the media by stating the facts to the media, to the police. So I'm the one that's still being harassed because she's taken out on me. And because I have the biggest social media profile, because nobody else is a YouTuber. So yeah, I'm still being harassed to this day. And because of her, I made a lot of friends like you and other people who comes onto my podcast. There's a lot of topics that we talk about, and we help save a lot of people because by these people seeing these content, they know what happened.
What you're doing is what we've always recommended, no matter where I've worked, is it's so important that people do report what's going on, not only to deal with whatever they're involved in. By bringing forward somebody's illegal activities, you may be saving a neighbor, some random stranger going through the same experience, because the authorities will know what's going on, how it's going on. If you're quiet, then that next victim will have no idea what's going to happen. And so by reporting it, you get that news out there. And perhaps despite the fact that you went through something, a very negative experience, somebody else is going to go, I want nothing to do with this. This is a bad scene. I'm just going to move it along.
I keep getting DMs every day. They're like, Mel, thanks for taking the punch. Thanks for submitting, because I just made a new police report. The victims are coming forward and they were telling me that this person is so angry right now because I took it to the media outlets at the beginning of the year, to multiple outlets. And she's now inciting strangers so that they can deposit money into my bank account, and then they can make false claims that I am the one who's asking them for it, so that I look like some fraudster. But these people obviously wouldn't do it, and instead they capture the conversation, they send it to me. And I went to the police and they said, it's very illegal when you're inciting people to do illegal things. But these people didn't do it. They're like, no, that's still illegal. Actually, just to ask someone to do is illegal. I just hope she keeps doing it. And I hope by the time this podcast airs, she's arrested and maybe behind bars. Fingers crossed. Yeah, need some luck for that. But I just want to say, Allister, thank you so much for sharing your insights and all of your expertise. Your perspective as ex-law enforcement and investigator really does help, because a lot of us as just normal people, we don't know what we don't know. And what seems to be common sense to a lot of law enforcement is not common sense to the civilian, especially when the emotions are all there. It's really hard to know what is common sense. But before we close, could you please offer one piece of practical advice to our listeners in terms of how to stay vigilant, how to protect themselves from being scammed in any way?
Yeah, if something sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. Often people jump into something, oh, that kind of fits into what I want. That sounds good. Taking people at their word is sometimes disastrous. So if something sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
Ooh, I will remember that. I should write that on my laptop. Thank you again, Allister, for being with us today. And to our listeners, remember, awareness and critical thinking, and of course, stepping back is a powerful tool against fraud. So please do share it with your friends and your loved ones so that there's no more me, no more happy. And I hope we can extinguish this from happening ever